we see that in the conclusion to chapter 27, Paul and his prisoners come safely to the island of Malta. I nearly went to Malta on a mission trip with our Catawba River Association in Morganton. I believe this was 2007. But Homer also had an invitation to go to Moldova, so the Lord led me there. It is my understanding Malta is one of the oldest Christian, I don't know what you call it, settlements or whatever in the world. But here we see Paul will be given the opportunity to perform some miracles. Now this will bring Paul closer to Rome, and we will consider that in the weeks to come. We hope to finish this series this month. And this will bring about the completion of the plan of God to bring Paul to Rome. He had a plan. And through all of this standing before all of these rulers and this shipwreck, and even being snake bit, he will go before Caesar himself. Now we see first of all the shipwreck and the landing in verses 39 through 44 of chapter 27. And again the centurion stands out. This centurion was a Roman. He was a Gentile, but he was God's protecting hand, as it were, over Paul. Now, according to Roman law, if a soldier was guarding prisoners and they escaped, then that means that the soldier lost their life. They would be executed. So the soldiers, they wanted to go ahead and kill the prisoners before they escaped because they knew they'd be in trouble if they let them go. But the centurion, and again, he was God's instrument to save Paul's life, he would not allow that. And he was not only an instrument to save Paul's life, but all 276 people on board. And Paul had received the word from God, as we saw this morning, that none would die, that all would be saved. And God, cannot lie. Now we've likened this to sort of an allegory of the sea voyage. We see that the day breaks. We see the face of God appears after the night of weeping and watching. And they did indeed have a very harrowing experience on that ship. And we saw the 4 anchors there that they put out, and then the 4 anchors there, the protecting providence of God and His promises. And we see that when need is greatest, He is nearest. And they come to a strange land. Now we see this in change in human life, moving to a new place, or change in circumstances. Transitions come to all of us. And they don't come any easier when you get older. It's more difficult to adapt to change or moving, whatever. It's also a figure of death. You know, death is a strange land that we don't have back. And I think that is the reason tonight. You know, we as Christians are assured of going to heaven when we die. But it's like Homer said when Daddy died about 9 years ago and he come there to the house. He said something to the effect, he says, I know you, Daddy is in heaven, no doubt about it, but he says we all have to die to get there. And there is that transition, death. It's something we we've never experienced before. And certainly Sister Faye gave a good testimony last Sunday night about the out-of-body. I would call it a grace of God experience there with angels and seeing Roger. And certainly let's keep her in our prayers for in the morning. So, you know, changes come our way, but yet they were met with hospitality from the natives that will be also part of God's plan. Now, we see in the first 6 verses of chapter 28, they were shipwrecked on Malta. There, in an attempt to run the ship onto the beach to fail. And they did not recognize the land, but saw a bay with a beach there in verse 39 of chapter 27. The land was the island of Malta, located south of Sicily. And the King James calls it Melita. The traditional site of the shipwreck is known today, I believe, as St. Paul's Bay. So they were planning to run to beach the ship, and they cast off anchors and they loosed the rudder ropes, hoisted the mainsail to the land, and then made for shore. Now these boats were not even like the old schooners or whatever. They had a large kind of a goose deck, and they paddled them with 2 paddles from within the ship. So they planned to run the ship onto the beach. They cast off the anchors, loosed the rudder ropes, hoisted the mainsail to the wind, and they made for shore. But they struck a reef, or a sandbar there where the 2 seas meet, or where they met. The bow becomes stuck and unmovable, and the stern broke up in a violent place. So the ship was pretty well toast. It was destroyed. Now, we see that verse 2, they're called a barbarous group, or barbarians. Now, in the Greek, that's barbarai. Those that speak a strange language. Not natives in the normal sense. Actually, that should be translated natives. In other words, not wild Indians or whatever. Now, we see here that the Christian will find everywhere a home. I've been all over the world doing missions. And in every part of the world where we went, there was God's people that welcomed us with open arms. And I mean, these were poor people. Now, we have poor people in this country. But we're rich. Even the very poorest are rich compared to the people over there. And they would have us in their house. And admittedly, it could be very uncomfortable. And they give us their best they had. I mean, they would do without, and they would save. And for this opportunity to have American missionaries into their home. But that's the way it is. You know, if the man or woman of God carries the love of God in his or her heart, no country, color, or custom of men can repeal. There is a saying, I am a man, and nothing human is foreign to me. The Christian could say, I am a follower of the Son of Man, and nothing that is dear to him is strange to me. So certainly, Paul will meet these people. But we say the Christian could also meet with peril, with misunderstanding and enmity. So Paul, he goes out, he wanted to make himself useful, and he gathers driftwood there to make a fire. When he does that, well, he gets snake bit. He didn't see that snake there in the wood pile. And we know that here in the summertime, there's snakes all around. Now you'll never see this preacher handling snakes. Now some of them do, but I ain't going to handle no snake. I don't do that. So you don't have to worry about no snake handling preacher in this church, because I run from them. I don't like them, even if they're a black snake. Well, I have killed a few, but I'm not much of a fan of snakes. So the snake there latched onto Paul's hand, and the people that saw it thought, well, he was a murderer. Evidently there was a superstition that said if you get snake bit or whatever, they thought he was a murderer since the snake latched there onto his hand. In other words, they thought, well, Paul was getting his just due. But Paul threw the viper off, and he was not hurt. Now that kind of goes back to the words of Mark 16:18. They'll, be able to withstand a snake bite. And the people there thought he was a god. One minute they thought he was a murderer, and then the next minute they thought he was a god. Now we see there in verses 7 through 10, 2 instances in which Paul is exercising his healing gifts as an apostle. He heals, first of all, Publius' father. Publius was the chief Roman representative there for that part of the island. And his father was ill, and Paul was able to bring about healing. The apostles were given healing. The original 12 were. They were given that power of healing. Now, I got into an argument one time with a woman. You'll know her if I tell you who she was. And she used to be a Catholic that said, well, they could go out and they can forgive sins too. I said, no, they can't. I said they were sinners, and if you sin, you don't have the power to forgive sin. You can forgive someone who has sinned against you or who has wronged you. But as far as me or you having the power to forgive sins, well, we just don't have it. And then the second instance built on the first. When the natives saw that Paul had healed Publius' father, they all brought their sick to be healed of Paul. Now, ironic. Paul had a thorn in the flesh. We don't know what it was. It's been speculated that it was his eyesight or any of another issues. We just don't know what his thorn in the flesh was. We know that he asked God 3 times to take it away from him. Evidently, it was pretty bad, or he wouldn't have asked God 3 times to take it away. And of course, God says no. Paul says, my grace is sufficient for you. But it is ironic that Paul is the healer with a thorn in the flesh. Kind of reminds me of Henry Nouwen's book, The Wounded Healer there. How God uses men and women who are broken in order to bring about healing, physical or spiritual healing. And we see in a similar way the great master Beethoven wrote immortal music but could not hear it because in the last years of his life he was stone dead. Now there's some conclusions here to this chapter, and we'll get into the final chapter 28 more in the next couple of weeks. But first of all, we see one person that stands out is Julius the centurion there in the first verse. He treated Paul kindly, giving him liberty to see friends and receive care. He didn't have to do this. He was under no obligation to do this, but we see once again the hand of God working. And he wanted to try to be good to Paul. And then we see he didn't do a very good job of listening to Paul. Paul said, now we need to winter here in the Fair Havens and not go on to Crete. But he didn't listen to it. But he did listen to Paul when Paul said that the sailors were sneaking off. In other words, everyone needed to be there in the ship. And he also saved Paul and other prisoners when the soldiers wanted to kill them. So many things we can credit to the centurion Julius. Paul stands out. And as we saw that this morning in the message, how he stood out. How he held the four anchors there in Paul's life. How he kept his wits about him when everyone else was going crazy. We see the irony, the prisoner became the captain. Now he advised there to stay in the Fair Havens. They should listen to him, but they didn't. We see whose invitation by an angel of God let Paul and all know what would happen. It all be saved. They would not perish. Whose counsel concerning the sailors helped to save all on board. And then, of course, as we saw that Paul urged them to eat and offer thanks, encouraging all on board. So we see that God's providence is seen in how he used a good soldier to provide for his faithful apostle, and using a storm and a shipwreck to demonstrate the value of one's faith in God to bless the lives of many souls. We will continue for the next couple of weeks in chapter 28, and then the last Sunday of the month we'll try to tie up and summarize the Acts.